creating a contract and figuring out how to send it and what it should say can be kind of intimidating, kind of scary. We're going to break it down today and talk all about that on the Wedding DJ School podcast. Well, hey there, my name is Josh, and this is the Wedding DJ School podcast, where we exist to help you become a wedding DJ professional. And not to just DJ one wedding, but really to build a business that's bigger than just one event or one skill that you have. So we want to talk about all the different processes that go into having a complete business so that you can run that business on autopilot to be able to create success on repeat, as we like to say. We create a PDF guide for every episode of the podcast so that it's easy to apply what you learn. You know, there's so much noise these days. There's so many things that are coming at us constantly. But when we take the time to focus on what we've learned and then apply it to our lives, that's when the information can become very valuable. So you can get the PDF guide for today's episode by going to weddingdjschool.com/podcast, select today's episode, and then you can get the PDF that way. You can also get it by texting in. You can text Wedding DJ, the word Wedding DJ, all one word, to 44222. We'll ask for your email address, and then we'll send you the PDF guide by email. So we're going to jump into today's content all about contracts, and we're also going to touch on invoices. And these are two essential documents that if you are going to be a professional, sending the contract is as simple as outlining the agreement that you're making, where you're going to do the event, how much you're going to be paid, what all of the stipulations and the circumstances and the understanding are. All of that is included in a contract. And I think a lot of times people can get intimidated because they hear the word contract and they're not sure where to start. Or you get freaked out and you think, wow, I need to go talk to a lawyer today before I send anything to anybody. So today, I kind of want to take some of the mystery out of contracts for you and make it very easy, very action-oriented so that you can create a contract that you are confident in sending, but also that you have a process. And that's really important for everything that we do, that we create processes and systems, things that we can do on repeat so that it doesn't take us 5 hours to write up a contract. Now, in your initial stages when you're first getting started and everything, you might want to take some extra time to think through things, be very careful about all of the wording. But let's talk about this. Where should you start when it comes to a contract? First of all, the understanding of a contract is that it's just an agreement for what you're going to provide, where you're going to provide it, how much you're going to get paid, and other agreements and understanding. So when you think about where should you start, you really need to start with a proper understanding of what a contract is. It doesn't need to have a ton of legal jargon. It doesn't need to be, this high pie in the sky, highfalutin language type of thing. You can be very clear and very direct in your contract of what you're gonna do. So start with the basics. Where is the event going to be held? Who is this agreement between? Where is this? What are the expectations in terms of what's going to happen at the event? For how long are you going to be there, etc. So all of that can happen within a contract, but you definitely need a contract. If you're thinking and you're asking yourself the question, do I really need a contract? I would recommend that you do so because contract says a couple things. One, it says that you are a professional and that you want to commit to what it is that you're going to provide. The other thing about a contract is that it puts the other person at ease. It puts the other person at ease because they see that you have thought through everything, that you are serious, that you want to get this in writing and get the understanding all clarified and everything. So I really recommend that you create a contract for any DJ event that you do because it allows you to communicate what you're going to do on paper before you actually do it. And the essence of being professional is that you can pull off, that you can do what you say you're going to do. So that contract is you saying, here's exactly what I'm going to do. Here's exactly how it's all going to happen. And that contract is a way of building that trust and getting that groundwork laid before you even show up at the venue to plan and to perform and promote the event. So let's continue talking about this. What is the best way to create a contract? I recommend using Google Docs. The reason that I recommend Google Docs is because it is kind of ubiquitous. You can get it on any computer. It's very easy to share Google Docs. It's very easy to edit them. You don't need to have a ton of extra software or fonts or whatever to make them look good. So I recommend creating your contract in a Google Doc. Have a template first of where kind of the blanks are going to be filled in. And then each time somebody comes your way, you're able to fill in those blanks. You can do this very easily by going up to File and then make a copy And then you create a new version of that with the client's name in there, and then you can fill out all the appropriate details. But you're also going to need a mechanism or a tool to be able to collect the appropriate information that you're going to need for that contract. So I recommend this list of things. You want to have the agreed upon rate, how you're going to accept the payment, the date of the wedding and the date of the event, where it's going to happen. So the exact location, DJ arrival time, ceremony time, cocktail time, reception time, and the end of the night loadout time. If you have an overtime rate, you could include that in your contract. Also, any expectations as it relates to meals and power and any other equipment that might need to be there, like tables or extension cords. Sometimes if it's a really big venue that you're going to need to be running cords or something, you would want to communicate all of that in your contract. You would also want to communicate your cancellation policy, any retainer or deposit that's going to go toward the overall cost, and how the planning process is going to work. In other words, what can they expect in that in-between time from when they book you until the point of the actual date, and then any other late fees or stipulations like that as it relates to overtime or charges like that. So you want to have this all kind of outlined on a document. And another way to kind of look into this, if you want to go a little bit more detail, check out the company rocketlawyer.com. Rocketlawyer.com, you can pay for it, or there's some stuff that you can get for really low cost, or very some stuff is even available there on free. A lot of this stuff has been written for your specific state or your region or your area. So by looking at your laws in your area, Rocket Lawyer is going to be aware of that stuff, and they can help you to craft a contract that is very specific to you. You may also be interested in doing a paid legal review. A legal review might be a little expensive. It really depends on where you live, what kind of lawyer that you go to, but you want to have somebody look over your contract to make sure that it's clear and make sure that it is applicable for your particular state and what is allowed law-wise in that area. And then I recommend sending the contract 24 hours after they have made the commitment that they, the client want to work with you. So those are some of my kind of parameters as it relates to how do I do a contract. We're going to keep talking about this. We're going to keep talking about it from a couple different perspectives. But I want to encourage you to think through the logistics of this. So you're going to need all of that information that we just talked about. So that stuff can be collected in a Google form. That stuff could be collected in an email. You could send them kind of a questionnaire, either in another Google Doc that they input the information into. But either way, you need to collect all of this information from the client as soon as they want to book you. So I do this by, on the very front end, I show everybody, here's what I'm able to provide. Here's the link that'll allow me to create a contract. And that link has all of the things that I just listed in that form, which then sends me an auto email reminder or an automatic email response with all the information perfectly typed up and laid out. And all I have to do is bring it right over into my contract document. So I really like that workflow for me personally. There are other ways to go about doing that. I know that DJ Intelligence, the company DJ Intelligence, has an automatic contract element built into their software, and other companies do that as well in a digital format. But if you're just starting off, you don't have a ton of money, you don't have a ton of capital, and you just want to get it done and do it in a way that is easy, makes you feel good, makes the client feel good, here's what I recommend again is creating that Google form link. And what you're doing by creating that Google form is you're creating something that's repeatable. Okay, so you could put that same information in an email, but next time you need to create a document, you are going to be hunting back for that email again and copy and pasting it and making sure that it looks the same way when you first sent it. So if you create the Google form, all you have to do is have that Google form link saved in a template in your process. So here's your process. As soon as somebody says, yes, I'd like to book you, they have the link to that Google form. And as soon as they fill out that information, you have 24 hours to create that contract and bring over all of that information into the document and then prepare it for sending to the client. So that's kind of the process, is that they're going to make a statement that I want to hire you. And at that point, you need to collect the appropriate information to fill out that contract. Everything from the date of the wedding, the time, all the things that we talked about, the venue, exactly how it's all going to go down for that particular area, and then put that into your contract in the slots that are available in your template. So I want to recommend you to create a contract template document first that has all those blanks in it, and then create a form that will allow you to fill in each of those blanks very easily. And but by doing this, you see what we're doing is we're creating a system. We're creating something that's bigger than you just doing this one time. This is something that you're going to be able to use over and over and over again. And it doesn't cost any money. To have a Gmail account doesn't cost you any money. Now, I will admit that I do pay for G Suite, which I think is around $6 a month, and that allows me to have a custom branded email address. So you get the Google Docs and the Google Forms through that custom email address. But that's if you want to go the extra mile and add that extra branding. For a regular Gmail account, you can do this stuff, and it works just as well. And a lot of businesses rely on Google Docs. A lot of businesses rely on Google Forms to collect information. So this is it's very simple, and even though it's free, don't be deceived. These are high-power tools to allow you to create and grow your business. So that is just a little bit about creating the actual contract document itself. I highly recommend Google Docs, and putting all of that together takes a little bit of effort on your part just to write out, here is exactly what I want to provide and what I am willing to agree to as a wedding DJ. Definitely check out Rocket Lawyer. I think they have a template for mobile entertainment and DJs that is a really good framework to start off with, but then also consider talking to a professional in your area. In this next section, I want to talk about the fact that a contract can only accomplish so much, right? So you can put everything that you want in a contract, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's in your contract if you haven't taken the time to clearly communicate exactly what the expectations are, okay? So a contract is really important because it's legally binding. You've got an agreement on paper. Here's what you're going to do, and the other person agrees to it. Okay, that's good and all. But you also want to think about how you can make the expectations very clear. So sometimes I hear other vendors say at a wedding, well, I don't know why I'm not getting a hot meal. Hot meal is in my contract. And I think to myself, okay, how out of your way did you go to make sure that was communicated to your client? It doesn't matter if it's in your contract. What matters is that it actually comes true. And really, a contract is kind of like insurance. It's kind of like saying, we just want to make sure that all of the stuff is very clear and written out in a clear and concise way. So what I want to encourage you to do and to think about is, how can you even go one step beyond that and make sure that what is in your contract, you're also very fluid and able to talk about those items. You're able to bring them up to your client and say, look, here's what I'm expecting, and here's kind of the plan for the day. Can we make sure that happens? In the contract, at the end of the day, that might win in court or whatever, but in the moment, you want what's best for the wedding, right? You want what's best for yourself, what's best for the other guests that are there. So your contract, go beyond the contract. In other words, think about how you can make sure that what's in the contract really comes to life by communicating those things, and not just kind of burying them in the contract and then just saying, well, it was in the contract. Did you read the you know what I mean? That's not the best attitude. So consider having an attitude of communicating clearly and not assuming that everyone is going to carefully read every word of your contract. You are probably the only person that is going to carefully read every single word of your contract. So while that's a nice expectation to have, be realistic about the client's stress, about their needs, their situation, their daily pattern of life and everything, and realize that you have the opportunity to go beyond just sending them the contract, but really to communicate all of those expectations. Because planning a wedding is stressful. Getting all these different vendors in place is stressful. You can be the vendor that reaches out and says, hey, let's just talk about this in plain language. Here's what this stuff means, and can we make sure that we agree on each of these items? So I recommend that as well. And at the end of the day, if you've got really clear expectations and an understanding of what's going to happen, the contract is really a formality at that point. Now, with that being said, I have been burned before. I have had issues where, I've had the contract signed and then I wish something else was in it, and I've adjusted accordingly. Some of the clauses that are in my contract are built off of negative behavior, of something that happened poorly in the past. And that's a lot of the time the case for other people. But I don't have the mindset of, the world is out to destroy me as as a business and as a person. I have the mindset that, mistakes sometimes happen, sometimes we don't get it right, but I really want to strive to communicate very clearly with the people that I work with so that they are in full understanding and in agreement with what I'm going to provide at the wedding and with what I'm also expecting them to bring on their end in terms of the venue and the equipment that would be available there, mainly power, making sure that we have power in the proper location, but also things like meals. I just always ask that, I get fed at the event, and I make sure that is communicated, and I don't say things like, oh, it's in my contract that I get fed at the meet. You know what I mean? Just say to the couple as you're planning or whoever you're working with, would it be possible that I get fed at the wedding? And if you are, you want to go a little bit beyond, you don't want a vendor meal. This is something that has happened before, happens frequently, is that there are two different kinds of meals. There's a meal for the guests, which might be steak and, shrimp and stuff that's maybe a little bit more expensive. And then there's a vendor meal served in a little styrofoam box. And I've literally have had a piece of toast with a little slice of ham on it before. And to be honest, I'm not a very picky person, and at a wedding, I don't want to eat a bunch of heavy stuff, so I'm often fine with just having, whatever vendor meal they have. That's me personally. You might be a little different. You might want a hot meal. You might want the steak, and, that might be a high ask, or that might be, an unrealistic expectation. But if it's a buffet line or if it's something like that, I usually just ask, could I go through the buffet line at some point in a discreet way? And usually there's no problems with that. So just making sure that you communicate your expectation. If you expect to get fed at the wedding, make sure that is communicated to the bride and groom, and then also make sure that on the day of the wedding that you've communicated that to the catering team so that they know that you need to go through the buffet line at some point. And you can do it in a very humble, kind of very laid back way. Say, yeah, at some point, I'd like to be able to go through the buffet line. Is there silverware around here that I could get, or something along those lines? And usually you're not going to have any problems. So I just want to encourage you in that aspect that the world is not out to get you and to destroy you and to create a terrible experience. You can get in control. You can lead yourself, and you can lead the client and the other vendors to get the result that you want. But doing so in a posture of humility is going to win the day every time. So that's my encouragement on that end. Next, we're going to talk about invoicing. Invoicing can sometimes be a little confusing if you're just starting off, because we've got contracts over here, which is an agreement about what you're going to be paid and where it's going to happen and everything like that. But then an invoice over here also is a document that says how much you're getting paid and where it's going to be. So what is the difference between these two things? The way that I like to think about it is the invoice is kind of just like a receipt. It's kind of like a formal receipt for the services that I'm providing, whereas the contract is more specific about all of the little agreements that happen. So what I do, and I haven't had anybody that says this is confusing. Usually people are thanking me for how clear and easy everything goes. I have an invoice and a contract. So what I do is, as soon as I send the contract, I also send the invoice, which outlines how the payment plan is going to work. So if I have somebody divide the payments into 4 different sections, I have each of those payments listed out and the due dates for each one of those. And then I also have any, if they make a deposit or pay the retainer is, let me explain that, by the way, if you're not familiar. So the deposit or the retainer is just a fee that they would pay down payment, basically, on the overall cost. So if the wedding is $1,000 that you're charging, $250 could be a down payment towards that. And that's what they would pay as a retainer that would be non-refundable if the wedding is canceled based on your cancellation policy of 90 days or something like that. But if that retainer is paid, you have to, for your own self, have a record of that. So here's why I went ahead and started using invoicing software. I'm going to paint the tension for you a little bit. Here's the problem. Here's what happened for me that led me to using invoicing. I had several weddings that I just started getting booked very quickly. I had like 10 weddings within the course of a week, and I was kind of overwhelmed with all these different people, and I wasn't sure who had paid me and who hadn't paid me. And I was going down the list, and then I was going and I was checking in my bank account to see, did I deposit this check, and whose was this check, and who's paid and who hasn't. And I wasn't sure who had paid and who had not paid. So what I did is I realized I need an invoicing system. I need a clear way of recording when somebody does pay me. So I started using Wave Apps back around 2000. I think it came out in 2012 or 2013. And I really enjoyed using Wave Apps at that time. They went sideways for a little while, or like I just didn't like it anymore. And recently they've really improved things, and I'm back on Wave Apps again. So you can find it at waveapps.com. I love Wave for all my accounting purposes, for both expenses and for invoicing and sending receipts and that kind of thing. So the invoice explains how much the person owes and how much they've already paid so far. So I started putting everybody's payments into that, and then I was able to track, okay, let me find client A, see how much they've paid. Let me find client B, and then I can very easily send reminders to people who haven't paid yet. So that's what an invoicing system can do for you. It can give you the clarity and the peace of mind of here's who has made the payments. You just have to be very disciplined about going into your accounting software and making sure that when somebody does make a payment and you deposit it into your bank account, that doesn't automatically, put it into your invoicing software. You also have to go into your invoicing software and make sure that you have selected that client, credited to their account that deposit or whatever that payment amount was, so that then you have a clear idea on what the balance is. In other words, how much left do they have to pay before the deadline. This is also another way to be very clear about the deadline, where I want to recommend to you that you get paid 2 weeks before the wedding. You can make that a month before the wedding, you can make it a week before the wedding, but I'll recommend 2 weeks. And the reason is because I used to think that, I don't want to charge people for work that, I'm not going to deliver. And I've abandoned that thinking. I no longer wait to get paid at the event or after the event. Here's what I found. Number one, I found that it was a little stressful for the clients because they were kind of, running around like, I'm not sure where I put your check. And it was always just kind of an awkward moment, either before the wedding or after the wedding. And I noticed that all the other vendors, they had already been paid. So I took a hint from their playbook and other professional DJs that I'm connected with, and they all got paid before the wedding. And I realized that's just what you do in the industry. So I want to encourage you to be professional and go ahead and ask to be paid before the wedding. Go ahead and ask to be paid before the event actually happens, specifically 2 weeks before. And here's why. You get paid 2 weeks before, you have no doubt in your mind that you are going to get paid or whatever. And if you're doubting and you're wondering, I'm not sure if I'm going to get any tips, I've gotten more tips since I've gotten paid before the wedding than I did when I got payment at the wedding day. When I used to get paid at the wedding day, in the psychological mind of the client, they're thinking, I'm paying them this big amount right now or this last payment right now. So, they don't need any more because I'm paying these other people tips. So if you're in an area where people tip, or if you have the kind of clientele that tips, it's more likely that you're going to get a tip if your total has been paid, ahead of time. So really want to recommend that you get paid ahead of time. But just in general, what your invoice is going to do is just be very clear about how much is left to be paid on their account. And what are the receipts, and how many payments have they made? Did they use check? Did they use card? Whatever. So an invoicing system is going to allow you to do that. Again, you can do this for free using waveapps.com, which I highly recommend. Very usable. You can also use them to charge credit cards. So I have used waveapps.com to charge credit cards, and it makes it really easy. You do have to pay a little fee anytime somebody swipes their credit card or enters the credit card online, but that's a convenience fee, and you can adjust your prices accordingly to factor that in there. You can also ask for payment by check. So I get a lot of check payments mailed to my P.O. box, and then I go on Wave Apps and make sure that I credit the account that way so that we have a record of all of the payment. You can also send automatic reminders through Wave Apps and other invoicing software like QuickBooks and Quicken and FreshBooks and stuff like that. So if you go into the invoicing side of it, you can drop down, click on the drop down menu, and there's a send a reminder button. And then it allows you just to send a very quick pre-written email that's ready to go for the client. So that allows you to nudge them to make sure that all the payments happen appropriately. There's also automatic reminders that are built in that you can check off within the invoice that you'll see if you go in there and log in and check it all out. You could, if you wanted to, link your Google Doc contract in the notes or description part of your invoice. So that's another thing to consider is, to keep it all straight in your mind and in the mind of the client, you can copy that Google Doc link and make sure that your contract is very clear and agreed upon also on the invoice side of things. So there we go. We've got invoicing and contracts. At the end of the day, What is most important is that you personally have an understanding of what you can provide, where your limitations are, what the cost is going to be, and all of that. And that you communicate that to your client, that you're not afraid to, just say, yeah, I know I've got a contract, but let's just talk about, here's the agreement. Here's what we're both in agreement on and understanding, and here's how we think this is all going to go. Does all of that sound good? And having that kind of spirit, I think you're going to go a long way. I think you're going to be very successful, and you're going to grow your company because you realize that at the end of the day, the papers are important, and you want to have that stuff, and you want to have that stuff done right. You want to do it really right, but you also want to go beyond that, and you also want to make sure that the people that you're working with are in understanding. They have a good understanding of what is going to happen and what the expectations are. So that's contracts and invoices. If you have questions, be sure to let me know. I'd love to talk about this more with you if anything wasn't clear. As always, you can find the PDF action guide by going to weddingdjschool.com/podcast. You can also text to 44222. That's the number. And then in the message field, write Wedding DJ. We will ask for your email address and then send the PDF guides over to your email that way. So hope this was helpful to you. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic day. See you next time.